everybody. Hello. Okay, so I don't usually use a microphone. So I have been practicing, but I am quite, how do you say it? Yeah, charismatic. Easy over there, okay? I am quite charismatic. So if it gets a little poppy, the universal symbol for easy now is, okay? So looking at my people in the back, if it gets a little wild, be like, hase. Suave, suave, okay, so. All right, yes, hello, I am Sarah B. Cruz. I have a bunch of different letters after my name, but it pretty much just means I'm a sterile processing nerd. CSS, SPD, MRI, whatever you want to call us, just make sure you call us on the phone and tell us what room you're in, or we will not be able to bring you your set, okay? So I do a lot of different things in the sterile processing industry, a lot of different bouffants, dare I say. So my favorite thing recently is I am a former director of the Healthcare Sterile Processing Association. That was such a huge honor to serve the entire sterile processing industry at that level. And so when I see all the candidates putting themselves out there, running for their AORN board, their nominating committees, their chapter work, it is truly inspirational. So if you've ever had just the littlest idea of maybe I have something here, the answer is yes, you do, and yes, you should, and why aren't you doing it already? Okay, so if you get that chance, please do that. I would love to see you up there representing an entire profession, yeah? And then recently, I have become a podcast host. Hey, what's up? So you don't get to see all this, but you get to hear all this. Okay, so I do a podcast about confidence certification. So if you have anyone in your facility trying to take their sterile processing certification test, whether it's through the CSPDT or the HSPA, or maybe there's some RNs who want some more letters, you guys got enough, but you can come have some of mine. It's all about making sure you have the mindset necessary to pass the test confidently, and then maybe we'll talk about some like glutaraldehydes and dynamic air removal and all that, okay? But in the meantime, today we are going to talk about integrity check. And with that being said, disclaimer, all the opinions and views expressed in this presentation are of moi, all right? I do not represent any of these companies or organizations, except for maybe that one, because that's my company, that I associate with. Oh, okay, great. Oh, louder? Okay, all right. So I don't represent any of those companies. It's just me. So if you like what I got, cool, take it with you. If you don't like it, right out of the department, okay? So today with integrity check, we are going to define integrity and recognize it in our professional practices. Examine origins of habits and practice, evaluate and choose habits that set us up for success, demonstrate how we remain engaged in professional process after being discouraged. I think a lot of us can relate to that, because usually I'm like, I'm going home, I'm good, today's done. So, and then I really want to make sure that you all feel like you can contribute to your healthcare industry's knowledge pipeline, because quite frankly, a vision without a goal is just a wish. If you are sitting here thinking, I want to do this, I want to do that, and you have not given it any idea, and you think, well, maybe one day it will work out, that's a wish. And you are all worth way more than wishing that you can have exactly what you deserve and exactly what your patients need, 100% of your passion. So as we challenge this phrase, please don't be discouraged, all right? You're gonna learn a lot of things about ourselves. Sometimes it gets a little philosophical, and you're like, easy, Sarah, this is a conference and a party, right? Not a therapy session. They really did that because they knew I was speaking at this time, and they were like, right, okay. So this is how we've always done it. It's a motivation muter, showstopper, and alliteration aside, it's terrible. Not only does it pause production, but it quite literally leaves people hanging and staying where they've always been, all right? Now listen, there's a lot of benefit that comes with this phrase. This is how we've always done it, all right? And there's a safety in that. So we're going to talk a little bit about what type of safety this phrase provides us and how we can use it to our advantage. And we're going to do that through a process that I like to call integrity check. And an integrity check is a hard stop for your professional development, all right? Remember, anytime you're going to put into anything, you should win out from it. And I hear a lot in this industry, and this next phrase may be quite taboo, but come with me on this. That's why you guys invited me here. You are here for patient safety. Can we all agree with that? Yes? I need you to be here for something more than that. I need you to be here for you. Patient safety is what we do and why we do what we're doing. But if you are not a part of that story, if you are not investing a part of you into the patient surgery success story, what are you doing in patient safety? Okay? There has to be something more than just doing what we need to do for our patients. I need you to win out from that. I need you to feel some type of success, fulfillment, enjoyment. Remember, being happy at work does not mean you are satisfied at work. What do you need to feel satisfied with the patient safety that you are providing? And we're going to do that through integrity check. We'll reevaluate our current state and why we are the way we are. Bummer. If you guys want to go to the bathroom for that, don't blame you. Okay, so we will talk about things like morals and ethics. I promise not to get too woo-woo. I don't even do yoga, so we'll keep it very level. And we'll do it through an honest assessment. So in this hard stop, let's talk a little bit about habits and systems. I love James Clear's Atomic Habit book. It has quite literally changed the execution and goal setting in my professional development, so I highly recommend it. No, he did not pay me to say that, but he could. So if you know James, send Jim my way, okay? No, I'm just kidding. So he says, you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And that is why we all have these great New Year's resolutions, right? How many of us set resolutions every year? Yeah? Okay, see some head nodding. It's cool, the nods count. You don't have to raise your hand. It's cool. It's cool, no pressure. So the reason why resolutions don't stick is because we haven't done any of the work to maintain the people we want to become. And you're like, what are you talking about, Sarah? I wake up and go to the gym at 4 a.m. I bought all the fancy gear. I got the cool shoes. I even got purple weights. For when I don't want to go to the gym, I'm totally going to use them. No, you're not. Okay. So, but with that being said, we didn't do any of the footwork to say we're going to wake up at 4 a.m. You know that habit, like, oh, if you do something for like a number of weeks, it becomes something yet you just are. Well, it's those number of weeks that is that make and break. That's when habits and systems are forming. And a lot of us don't stick with things long enough to create a system that maintains, sustains, and promotes it. Okay, so think of the last thing you said you were going to do, and then really think about why it didn't work out. I tried to go back and get my bachelor's degree 4 times. Okay, I can tell you why it didn't work out, and none of them were money, okay, because I have tuition reimbursement at my job. What's up, Hartford? Okay, so, but it didn't work out because I said I was going to do all these things, and I was not willing to change anything about myself to sustain this new demand I was making for myself, okay? And that is really the root of this is how we've always done it. So let's talk about how we can break down that phrase, recreate systems with positive and some spicy habits, yeah? So justification and verification are the 2 parts that make our systems, all right? So verification. I feel like we all know what verification is, right? Validation, verification, yeah? Even in sterile processing, we have to run Bowie-Dick tests every day to make sure our autoclaves work, right? Even if you've counted the same endocoli setup, you still got to count every single one of those lap gauzes, even though you work with that same doctor every single time, right? Might be that one chance, right? You're doing it that way every single time because you're verifying a process. So when we are in verification mode, we want new information, and it's a we gain mentality, okay? When we're stuck in verification, However, that is when we are protecting our current habits, all right? If we're often explaining what we are doing and we are using I statements, you may be stuck in justification, okay? Because justification mode is when it's I versus them. Okay, I got one. How many of us are training someone and we go, well, they do it like this, but I do it like this? Okay. Oh, good. So it goes across the entire industry. Great. All right, perfect. Perfect. All right, great. So that's justification at its finest. You know what's expected. You know the habits. You know the systems. However, I do it. And there's always a little bit of, I do it like this. So how can we push and pursue verification mode where we're becoming inclusive, we're considering where other people are covering, leveraging realities? So why have we always done it like this? We're so quick to say it, but when's the last time we've asked ourselves why we always do it this way? Okay, quick story. I've been in sterile processing for 16 years. Wow, I met a nurse who was in nursing for over 30 years, and I feel like there's a lot of those nurses in this room. So thank you. I can't wait to see what it's like to be in sterile processing for 30 years. She was telling me about a time before C-arms, and we were like, oh. And you know, my husband, he's an OR aide, okay? So he's the dude who would be flipping the patient over with you guys. So he's like, oh no. It was great. So it was very eye-opening. But why have we always done it like this? When's the last time we asked why we do what we do? Again, think of those autoclaves. And even further back, think about IUSS versus flash, right? And don't you dare say they're the same things or we are gonna fight. No. The nerd hat will come off. No, I'm just kidding. So even with IUSS and flash, you have all these organizations come together, AMI, AORN, ISHM, now HSPA. They're coming together and saying flash is not the appropriate definition, nor does it reflect the safest practices for patients. We are going to introduce flash. We're going to petition IUSS. We're going to petition this, and we are going to change all the standards. And they did that. They didn't need to, but they had to. They must. So if an entire industry can come together and literally rewrite standards, we can do this. We got this, folks. Okay, we can do this. Here we go. And it really just breaks down into our morals and our ethics. I like to say that, oh my gosh, I used to dance to this song all the time in college. Sorry, I'm sorry. Excuse me. I know you all heard that song. So morals and ethics are your how and why. So I like to joke around that, you know, morals are why you do what you do, and ethics are how you do what you do, right? So I like to tell people when I give this presentation down south, this usually makes them all clutch their pearls. So if you're from the south, just be ready. That's your warning, okay? Now, I personally do not hold the door for people. Right? Don't see I see the eyebrows. Easy, okay? I'm a good person. I say thank you and please, right? And I like to blame it on like healthcare training because they're always like, don't hold the door for someone. You might let a perpetrator. You know, you all took that training, right? So why are you guys holding doors? I'm just saying, judging me, no, okay? But I don't like to hold doors, okay? I will always thank the person that does it for me, and sometimes I'll give it the college try and I'll hold it like this, like, oh, okay. Right? Give it a good go. But that's something that's in my morals. I just don't do that. That's not part of my principles. That's not how I conduct myself, okay? Another taboo thing. I know, you're like, dang, why did they pick this person? Another taboo thing, I don't like to stay late at work, okay? And you're like, you are literally talking to a room of nurses who work like 412s, 512s, 612s, all the 12s. No, I'm just kidding. 24 hours, no. But seriously, like I'm a salary, and I don't like to work past 48 hours in a week because I know when I'm past 48 hours, I start to get into the 52, 56. They're not getting that version of me, and my team's not getting that version of me of what they need, you know? And that's part of my principles, and that's how I conduct myself. Now, I need you guys to reflect on those two statements, which I purposely put out there and called myself on, because how are you reacting to that right now? You're like, oh, that's not cool, or oh, I better make sure she goes through the door first or not, you know, right? So how you're reacting and how you're feeling about those two examples are your morals. If you're like, that's right, Sarah, don't you dare let that perpetrator in, what's up, you're my people, okay? Or if you're like, Sarah, that is not cool, you need to hold the door for that person, right? I do help elderly people across the street though, and that's a genuine thing. But with that being said, I still don't hold doors. And how you're feeling about that is a reflection of your morals. I am not of less morals because I don't like to stay late at work. That is your definition of good morals, right? Because if we look up the definition of morals, it has nothing to do with staying late. It has nothing to do with holding doors. It's just said the way in which a group of people hold themselves and expect others to act. Whoa. So what does that mean? Morals are personalized, okay? So that's why this is how we've always done it, has always been around, because it's a reflection of your morals, right? And then we get to ethics. How do you do that? How do you hold open the door? Are you the kind of person that goes like this and like lets them all come through and you're like, here we go, right? Or are you the kind of person that does like one of these things and your back is turned to them and they're just like flying out behind you, right? How you do holding the door, how you run your shift, how you expect your team to act, how you do your final count, how you make sure there's a count sheet is all an example of your ethics, right? How you conduct yourself, what you deem is proper, and there's that word, habits. Now, habits are directly linked to our systems, right? We just went over that. So let's talk a little bit about how they play in. It would not be a professional development presentation if there weren't like stairs, right? Okay, so let's ride the stair theory. So when we are building habits, first you start off with like your technician's personal point of view, morals, and then you have the good and the bad integrity, why you're doing what you're doing, and if it's getting you the end results you want, it's going to build into how you repeat things over and over again, right? You know you're not supposed to, like in sterile processing, you're not supposed to use corners with sets that are under like 15 pounds, those little foam corner things, but you're going to put them on because you're going to make sure there's no holes, but really the set's coming out wet, right? That's a good intention with a bad outcome. Same thing in nursing, right? You know you have to do the end count at the end of surgical cases, but you know if you start right now, you can get done and you'll be able to turn the room over just that much faster and right? Oh, I see people shaking their heads. I'm sorry, that was a spot, right? So you have the good with the bad integrity, the success of the outcomes, which is big, right? How it's turning out, that's going to apply to our systems and our habits. And now you have constructed and acclimated habits. It's going to build one on top of the other, on top of the other, and then it's going to be who you professionally are. Yes? Great. So let me tell you my story. Okay, so I started in sterile processing 16 years ago. Oh my gosh. And then one of my first jobs, second job, third job? I think third job. I was in decontamination and I was sending the instruments through the instrument washer. And I had a thing where I liked to put basins, because we had reusable basins, on the top shelf. And I figured if I put basins on the top of each load, I would never have a huge stack of basins, right? So I would do that. Now, there was a priority turnover. How many of you guys get priority turnovers every day? And then how many of you guys say it's a priority turnover and it's not? If it's needed in more than 3 hours, it's not a priority turnover, okay? No, I'm just kidding. But you know, we get priority turnovers in, they need it for an hour. My manager or my lead tech comes back and they're like, hey, we need this sent through, send it out right away. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I know how to do my job. I know how to do it. Right, so I'm doing my thing, still putting the basins on the top, they're coming out, coming through. And she puts her head back and she's like, Sarah, why are you sending through these basins when we need all these sets for priority turnovers? And I looked at her and I was like, Pam, this is how I always do it. You're doomed to teach the things that you've lived, my friends, okay? So if you've lived some experience, make a presentation out of it and have some people laugh, okay? So this is how I always do it. And there's always that little bit of, I do this, yeah, feeling real good of myself. Well, my manager comes around the back and he's like, Sarah, why aren't you putting the priority sets through? And I'm like, oh, well, you know, I always, you know, just the basins, priorities, and it's important. I always do it like this. And he's like, Sarah, take the basins off, stop this load, and put all those sets in. He walked out. I did exactly what he said. I was like, you about to lose your job today? Like, I was like, oh my God, this man's gonna fire me. He's gonna fire me. Okay, so priorities got through. We did not have to put them in a one tray apparatus, which is great, right? But despite that, at the end of the shift, manager calls me out and he's like, listen, Sarah, I know you do it a certain way, but in this department, we do it the patient's way. Okay, so if you're not gonna do it that way, you do not need to come into work tomorrow. That man is now my mentor, and he has helped me become the person that I am today, and I'm very pleased with that. I swear a little bit less than he does, though. But God bless that man, because I am a handful. You can ask anybody who works with me, okay? That was an example of my constructed and accumulated habits. It had literally gotten me to that point where even my lead came up to me, who at that time had 35 years of experience. I was like, girl, and I was like, girl, okay? So what had happened was I fell into this space of moral uprightness and high-mindedness. These are byproducts of morals and ethics, okay? Moral uprightness is obviously in alignment with morals, yes? So when we are so much of ourselves, and this is how I do it, this is why I do it this way, we hold ourselves to a certain level of presentation, right? It's okay if you feel good about holding doors for people. It's great that you feel really good when you stay late at work because you really feel like you're helping the team. That is awesome. But when it becomes perverted by our own ego, the reason why we do it is not the reason why it's done anymore. So like my basin story, the reason why I was doing the basins wasn't why I was doing the basins. It's because I was doing the basins, right? And then you have the reflection of high-mindedness. There's your ethics. Well, the way I do it is the best way to do it, okay? And if we're at this point, and this is how we've always done it, where even ourselves are above reproach by ourselves, we got to stop. We got to look at that, because in this spot here, this is where this is how we've always done it lives, okay? It's just like the wraps in sterile processing. They're double bonded, double woven. You've got morals, you've got ethics, and the tape and the press holding them together is your integrity. So we have to make sure, like the holes in our sets, there's not holes in the wraps that are our integrity. We cannot have that. Our patients do not deserve that. You don't deserve that. So how do we fix that? Challenge accepted. You guys are never going to be able to unhear the things that I've said to you. And I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry, okay? Because this is where the fun actually starts. Now we've gotten all the foundation, philosophy stuff out of the way, okay? Now we get to the fun part of the presentation, action. Because what is hope without a strategy? Oh, wish. There we go, right? Let's talk about it. Don't quit before the change. Remember, you are not above reproach. Do not think that just because you have tenure or you have a solid practice that you're not open to new things. Be open. Why not? What's it gonna hurt? You might have to hear some bad ideas every now and then, right? But you know, whatever. That's like the worst of it. It's not like you get a ticket or like you have to go to court or something, right? It's not the end of the world. Are you undervalued because you've lived this? No, absolutely not. How many of us have said, this is how I've always done it? You can nod if you don't want to raise your hand. What's up? Yeah, because we've all done it in some type of way. It's got cousins like, well, let's do it my way. That's their second cousin. And then you've got aunts and uncles like, well, the team does it like this. That's the aunt and uncle version of that, okay? So there's relatives of that phrase and versions of that. Are you unintelligent? Absolutely not. There are good reasons why you do it the way that you do it. Those habits and systems have served you, and they've gotten you the results that you wanted, and you probably received accolades for them. A good job and more than just a pat on the back go a really long way in tireless jobs like nursing, sterile processing, and surgical tech, because if you've got a mad doctor, they're not telling anybody you're doing a good job. They don't care. Okay. So at the same time, no. Were you wrong? Oh, yeah. Okay, we got to take that one, okay? We have to take that one in. We were wrong. It's okay to be wrong, right? And if you're not wrong yet, that's okay. We can just go back and do all the rest of the other sites. No, I'm just kidding. So if you're wrong, that's fine. You're human. So let's correct and look and see where we have opportunities to grow there. Because this is how we've always talked about it. That looks pretty familiar, right? Right? That's sterile processing right there. Right? And then all the way over here, you have EVS. We're like, what are you even doing here? So this is how we've always talked about it. Communication and discussion. We have a duty as healthcare professionals to encourage, hear, and invest in other people's recommendations. And you're like, oh, Sarah, don't say this. Don't you dare say the next line. Ideas. And you have to promote dialogue. You have a responsibility to do that, okay? Even if they're coming up to you and they're saying the weirdest thing ever, it is our duty to our patients to make sure that we're engaging in these conversations with our colleagues, because this is how the industry gets better, okay? Did you know that the Bowie Dick, the first sterile processing, legit sterile processing department did not open until the 40s? The 40s. It's 2024, folks, right? The first Bowie Dick wasn't even challenged and created until the 20s. Isn't that wild? They were just using autoclaves hoping it was going to work out. Well, I mean, and then you got Nightingale, right? Where you guys started getting the Nightingale Award, and that's a big thing because it had a lot to do with stopping infection at wound sites. It was normal to just let it rot a little bit before Florence Nightingale came around and was like, hear me out. I don't think this is a good idea, okay? So with that being said, we have this duty to hear things out. And first of all, if someone's coming up to you and saying an idea, good for you. I don't care if it's the dumbest thing you've ever heard. They identified you as a change maker. They identified you as someone who would listen. They see you as an opportunity to try something different. Good for you. That's awesome. You can't buy that, okay? So if people are always coming up to you with the ideas, that's congratulations, because it is sought after in this space. There's not a lot of people who want to hear anything, and if they're choosing you, especially if you're not the manager, but if they're choosing you, that's great. You did that. There's something about you that makes them feel like you'll hear them, all right? Because that's what it's about. It's me versus we, moving towards a collective and inclusive thought process. Not the way I've done it, but this is how we do it together. Now, sometimes you got to drag people along when you're doing it together. Yes, I am always late. My colleague Mike has to tell me we're leaving at a different time, so I show up on time, okay? He's just as bad, though. Don't let him tell you anything, okay? We lie to each other so we can be good people, all right? So, but moving towards a collective and inclusive thought process, the way we do it. So are you ready for the action? All right, someone comes up to you and they're telling you their idea. The first thing you got to do is check in, right? That hard stop, that honest assessment, you're checked in, you're looking at somebody. Don't make it uncomfortable. Make sure you blink, okay? Right? You checked in, you're paying attention, and you're hearing them out. How many times do we start to hear somebody talk and we're already thinking about what we're going to say before they finish? I'm so guilty of that. I have attention deficit, and if I don't, if I don't get what I need to say out right away, I am going to forget. Okay? Some of you in the room are like, Sarah, I don't even have ADHD, and that's a thing. Okay, so cool, you're my people. Yeah, so hear it out. You have to hear it out. There's so many opportunities in hearing it out. One, it could be a really great idea that you didn't think about. Nice, right? Moral uprightness, high-mindedness challenged by someone identifying you as a change maker. Congratulations. Another great opportunity is it shows you where you have the opportunity to educate people. Sometimes people come up with ideas because they don't know the whole process behind it, right? You come up to somebody and you're like, hey, hear me out. This happens a lot in sterile processing. And that's how I usually start the conversations in the office with the manager. I'm like, hear me out. Just hear me. And he's like, oh no. He's like, no, Sarah, I don't have 20 minutes. So hear me out. Someone comes up to you and they're like, hey, you know, if we stop using bumpers on the outside of our wraps, we're going to save this much money and we'll save this much time doing our sets. And you're like, oh. And inside you're kind of dying. You're like, oh my God, they're not using bumpers. I finally found out who was not using bumpers. I can fix it, right? So, and you're like, oh. And they're like, yeah, I've been doing this for like 3 weeks. And in your head, you're like, I know. Okay. So you've heard them out. They've said it. And then you're like, oh, what made you think of that? And you're like, oh, well, they were like, well, one night I ran out of bumpers and I didn't know where they were to replace them. So I just stopped. Oh, okay. It's funny, we laugh, but that person who's been working here doesn't know where the bumpers are. There's your opportunity. You're like, hey, you know, we have to use the bumpers because it's outlined by our guidelines and our best practices, but let me show you where the bumpers are. All right? And this happens a lot with new sterile processing techs too. I get a lot of young ladies that come into the department and they have very long hair and they try to shove it under one bouffant. How many of you guys have done that in the OR? They're like, it's like a challenge now. Now you're like, getting the bouffant over it, right? So they don't know that it's okay to use two. I have to tell some people, hey, you know, you can use a second bouffant. And they're like, oh my God, really? And I'm like, yes, girl, they're like 25 cents each. Please use another one, okay? So it's those small things that you're identifying just by being open to the fact and hearing somebody out, right? Like, could you imagine if someone's like, listen, I know this patient's latex free, but if we put the latex on and then put these gloves over them, you're like, no, right? You have to hear it though, because why are they coming up with that? What opportunities do you have to prevent that later? And bypass ourselves and that moral uprightness and high-mindedness to correct or offer more improvements elsewhere. Versus interpreting. If you are starting to compare how they're suggesting something to how you do it, stop. You've checked out already. Stop. Encourage more information. All right? Now, I could have been like, oh my God, it's you who wasn't using the bumpers, but instead I was like, oh, why'd you do that? Right? To find out more. Find out additional information. Be that change maker. Be the reason why we do it this way. And what do we do when it happens to us? So we talked about a situation where somebody, you know, they're talking to us and that, you know, we're not doing it to them. But how many of us have heard this is how we've always done it? Oh, there are all the hands, okay. Very good. And like I said in the description of this presentation, it lingers throughout all of the healthcare industry in every, sorry about that, I got excited, in every profession because it has validity. And we've all said it. So what do we do when it happens to us? Got this really great idea and you're like, oh my God, Colleen, I got this idea. You got to hear me out. Like, we're going to do all this stuff. And instead of doing the plastic set like this, we'll take out all these Kearsons and everything like that. We'll put this in there. And she's like, no, we're not going to do that. And you're like, oh, and you've been thinking about it for like a week. You're like, I was able to cut down this set by 15 instruments. First of all, thank you. Second of all, no, your whole week, I don't know why you spent all that time on that. So someone says it to you, but this is how we've always done it. First step, pause. Everybody got their aromatherapy on, right? Like, we need to put 2 on here, okay? Got to take a pause. Yeah, does anybody else really sad COVID's over? Because we don't have to wear, oh, this girl's got a mask on though, you're good, okay. Listen, COVID didn't help me because you can see exactly how I'm feeling through my eyes. So it just made it worse. I was just right there. All right, but you got to pause because the difference between responding to a situation and reacting to our feelings is that 1 second pause. One of my favorite lyrics is, you can't respond if you react. So take a deep breath, whatever you got to do to pause. Some of us shake our leg. I usually go like this. You see that? I'm like, oh, okay, I haven't done that yet. All right, so pause. Don't react. What you have to say and your idea and your ability to patient improvement deserves more than a reaction. It deserves a response from yourself and the person listening. Be aware of moral uprightness. Are you suggesting this idea because it's a good idea, or are you suggesting this idea because it's your idea? Oh, I'm guilty of that. I feel like every idea I have is a great idea, and I'm like, oh, hear me out, and Mike's like, not today, Sarah. Okay, so you got to pick your spots, right? Be aware of that. And watch for high-mindedness. Just because you're doing it this way doesn't mean that it's tangible for other people to do it this way. A good idea, a good process improvement means it spans across multiple people in one space. So how can you make it general enough for people to apply it everywhere else? Simply, because remember, if it's more than 3 steps, people are not listening anymore, okay? No, it's not happening. And don't hyper-focus. If you are so focused on passing this idea off, then that moral uprightness and that high-mindedness have taken over, okay? So don't hyper-focus on the outcome. The process is what's important, yeah? So, and then when you're in that conversation or confrontation, however spicy you're feeling that day, remember when to hold them or fold them. I like to play poker, so I was very excited to put this in here. All right, Texas Hold'em, no limit. Don't sit to my left, you'll regret it. All right, so you know when to hold them or fold them. Verbal abuse is never okay at work. I don't care who's doing it to anybody. All right, doesn't matter what position, doesn't matter how long you've been there, it's never okay. So here's some boundaries. Hold them if you can remain unbiased. Ooh. Right? Remember, it's the idea, not your idea. If you're not like, oh, well, they're only saying this because they haven't done periop in a long time, or they're only saying this because they're a new nurse. You know what I'm saying? Unbiased, unbiased. Remember, processes have to span multi-generations, multi-experiences. It has to fit in. You can accept critique. Oh, I hate this part. So now they've heard your idea and they're like, well, what about this and what about that? They're not telling you they're wrong. They're actually trying to help you figure out how to strengthen your process or your idea. But inside you're like, well, who asked you anyways? You know, right? And then you have to remember where we started, okay? The idea, the idea, the idea. Fold them. If you become biased, step out. Just step out. My favorite phrase is, hey, let's circle back to this. Who likes to circle back to stuff? We don't ever circle back to it, okay? We're not circling nothing. We're doing squares, right? If you get angry, or even worse, if they get angry, not worth it, all right? It is worth it if it's a direct patient harm outcome. If somebody wants to start count before they should, hold that line. But don't make every hill you die on a tiny hill. Make it a big hill. Remember, my mentor always told me there's going to be lots of hills, lots of battles that we're going to have to fight. Which ones are you willing to die on? Pick them. Pick as many as you want. As long as they reflect you and hold that line in patient safety, absolutely have them. And then take a course on how to relay them effectively without screaming and swearing. Okay, so there you go, right? And sometimes you have to scream. But anyways, lose your point. Remember, it's not about you. It's about the process. Okay, does it hurt when we throw out ideas and people don't like them? Yes. I'm sure there's presentation. This presentation is going to hit with people and it's going to be like, why? I just ate lunch and I am tired. What is happening right now? It's okay. Don't lose your point though. It's going to sit or it's going to right outside the department. Remember we did that earlier. What matters is how you say it, okay? How you're saying something matters. When you're saying something matters too. Why are you trying to talk to somebody about a process improvement idea in the bathroom? Why are you doing it while they're eating lunch? Stop, don't do that, okay? Why are you trying to do it while they're running to a meeting? Maybe it's because you don't feel like you can get the time of day with them. Get the time of day, put it on their calendar. Oh, the woes of a calendar. I live by this calendar. Someone's like, Sarah, we told you 10 o'clock. It starts at 10:30, 10 o'clock. All right, so I show up on time, right? Who you say it to? It's who's got a workplace BFF? Mine's right here in the front row. Thanks, buddy. Yeah? That one person you'll ride or die with, it doesn't matter what they did. You're like, no way, not today. No way, Becky with the good hair. It's not happening. Don't you talk to him like that. You don't even know what they did. They could be 100% wrong. It doesn't matter. For me, it's the person I can always go into decon with, and they'll battle it out with me. Because even this day, I still go into decon. I make it a point, even though I'm an office warrior now, and I live behind my computer, make it a point to go into decontamination. Who's the same? Yeah? But they are not going to help you get a process improvement across. If you're having a great idea or you're venting to somebody in decontamination, when you guys are doing your scrubbing, right, getting ready to go in and you're going to get gowned up and everything, and you're just like, I don't know why. We always do it like this. We never use that bone wax, and they always drop it on our table, and then we got to charge for it. That's not going to change anything. You still need to have those, though. You 100% still need to have those vent sessions. It's very important. But who you say a process improvement idea to and who you're challenging, this is how we've always done it to, makes the difference. Make time with that person, identify them, and if you need an advocate, find that champion. Yeah? Might be your work BFF. Maybe it's a manager. Maybe it's someone with a little bit more focus in the area than you. If you're going to make an update to a plastic set, maybe you pick the tech who's always at the plastic set table in the room. Yeah? Facts and data, I think, we should, will not get you anywhere. Okay? Facts, data, documents, standards, regulations. If you have an idea, create your hypothesis, find the information to back it. And if you haven't been able to find it, that might be that challenge to this is how you're doing it. Maybe it's not the right idea. That's a hard thing. And then lastly, remember I versus we. I could have an idea because it will help all of us. I'm challenging this is how we've always done it because it will help us. Now, as we move into the end of this presentation, I do want to thank you all for your time. I also want to thank Solventum for sponsoring and being a gold sponsor for this presentation today. I do a lot of work with them going out and giving presentations. I write on their behalf in OR Today, Healthcare Purchasing News, and in the HSPA magazine. I write a ton about education, quality, and process building. And if you're wondering where they got their name from, who's wondering why 3M went with Solventum? It's solving with momentum. That's how they came, right? That's how they came up with it. They pulled completely away with 3M because they wanted to be their own identity. They are just the medical and healthcare sector of 3M now. That's why they're Solventum. So I do want to thank them. And I want to remind you and thank all of you that you are the pulse of your department. I say this a lot for sterile processing. It applies for all my nurses, my surgical techs, and anybody else in this room and in between. You are the pulse in your department. Surgeons will have to hand themselves their own scalpel, put their own gown on, and count their own lap sponges if you're not there. Okay? So with that being said, you are the heart of that hospital. While it's true surgeries can't happen without sterile processing, surgeries won't proceed without a staff to work in it. And furthermore, if you are here today, you are the voice of your industry. If you have been bringing up the same idea to your colleague, if you have an opinion about who is running on your board, if you have 1 year of experience, 40 years of experience, your voice matters. Like it was said last night, less than 15% of AORN nurses acted in the election for their board. Even less voted for their nominating board. The nominating board steers the direction of your industry. I know everybody thinks it's really the board that gets stuff done. I was on a board. We argue a lot. We're passionate. That's what we call it. That's professional. The nominating committee decides who is going to run for your board. So if you are ready to see change in your industry, if you like the way it's going, get out there and vote, okay? Thank you. And even further, if that's scary for you, that's cool, I get that. Join your chapter. I know Cassandra and Leah can get all the help. They'll find something for you to do, okay? They find stuff for me to do, and I'm not even in their chapter. No, I'm just kidding. I love you guys, okay? Join your chapter. That could mean you help put on a conference like this. Maybe it means you just send out all the emails. Maybe you fold all the trifolds. There's different levels of participation in your chapter. Be the voice of the industry. I clearly like to talk. Leah's out there giving presentations now, and we don't mind standing on soapbox for you, but it is big enough for all of us to soap out on it. And with that being said, thank you guys. I appreciate your time.